Hello, I'm Valentina Kozlova, former principal dancer of the Bolshoi Ballet and New York City Ballet, also co-founder of VKIBC competition and founder of Valentina Kozlova Dance Foundation. In the program Pulse on Dance and Science of Movement. Let's get started.
So today I would like to introduce extremely important person in dance world.
Well,
Michael Mao.
Thank you. I always remember how beautiful you were on stage and off stage.
Thank you.
So it's a real pleasure for me to be speaking with you today, and excited to see that you are starting this wonderful project.
Yes, I'm very excited to talk to you because you represent so many things. When I came to this country, I mean, I don't know how many titles you have. Dancer, director of your own company, educator, choreographer, and God knows so many things. It's just an accomplishment. How did you start dancing?
Well, I think that many of us started having, we all started dancing, and then at some point we have to redirect our energies. So some of it I was very happy to do, and some of the aspects I was kind of talked into by management, like arts education, but then I decided that, it was okay, because what we did was in the right way of thinking to benefit society. I mean, dancing benefits society because it makes the audience happy and feel the joy of being alive. But at a certain point, we could direct using our medium to get the audience to be more engaged. And so to that extent, I was willing to embrace some other fields, but basically my major joy after dancing is choreography. But also recently, I started getting into, since COVID, I also started getting into teaching a little bit. But the choreographing strand of my second career came because actually my mentor first said to me there was going to be a big outdoor installation, and would I take over one section of that project. Mm-hmm. So I did, but that was of course only for that particular event. Mm-hmm. But it got a good review by a music critic actually. So that kind of kicked off, the sense that I could put together something for dancers to dance in. And then it came again several years later when the same choreographer director said to me, "It's time for you to make a dance." And I said, "Well, I just did one." And she said, "No, this one that can be done again after it passes." So I did, and I remember this very clearly because, essentially my first serious dance, which was 3 minutes and 6 seconds. and it was a piece of music that's actually very well known and has been choreographed to, but nevertheless I thought it was okay, being a novice to use the piece of music that's been done by very famous choreographer, and I just used one section of it, and it was and it was repeated many times and got very good reviews. And my director said to me it was extraordinary. She said, because for most beginner choreographers, they make their dances very long. And she said, but yours was so brief, but it was quite complete. I mean, for the beginner, it wasn't bad. And then the second one was 4.5 minutes. The third one was 7 minutes. And I think that it was the fourth one. It was actually and it was actually commissioned because we had to do a new piece, and the director didn't want to make a new piece, and it was for the summer. And I had been listening to a record. It was a record at that time of a very young Mozart, a symphony, and I just thought it was the greatest thing. What I was making was the greatest thing. And for 3 days, I just would go to rehearsal and come back, listen to the music, go to rehearsal, come back, listen to the music. And I ate. I never forget about eating. But basically that was what I enjoy doing. And then when that work showed, a couple of music people around the company said to me, "This looks like what you're supposed to do. It feels right for you." Now I look at the work and say, oh, it's a young person's work. But it was a young symphony by Mozart, but I just thought both the music and what I made was just so wonderful. So I think that has its, I think that kind of started making me think, okay, this is something that I could do. And in time, I just kept making more. And I think that I've been very, well, what's the term? Lucky isn't always the right word, because, I mean, we all actually, in our different ways, have to work very hard as dancers. So, I mean, that comes comes with the whole package, that even when we do our second careers, we work hard. And but I think I enjoy doing that and continue to be curious. And I didn't get into making just one thing. I made different dances. And in the last 15 years, perhaps, or even a couple more years, when we would tour the company, tour my work to different regions of the US, and sometimes even abroad, if it's in a venue where there isn't a bar at intermission, really big venue, then it has to be a main stage presentation. But if we, for example, go to a college in the Midwest, I would actually not have an intermission, have 3 works, perhaps, or 4 works, just done consecutively, making sure that it's not all the same, so that the audience would get a variety, like a full, 4-course meal instead of just one dish, which bores them. And they would enjoy meeting the dancers afterwards. They'll come after they get changed and sit on the edge of the stage and speak with the audience that wanted to stay, and either ask them questions, or we would solicit for their feedback. We call it talkback. And they get to ask questions, and it was very revealing. They usually are more interested in the dancers' lives. How did they start dancing? And then secondarily, perhaps, is how these dances came about. And that was a wonderful clue to me, that in the end, if you want to, in my mind, do our job, we have to think, how do we bring joy to the audience that would make them feel they want to know more.
Exactly.
And that way, then they get to more and more esoteric dances. one of the things that I think is regrettable is that over that period when we were dancers, that hasn't changed all that much, is that the audience hasn't grown too much bigger. That it could have grown even bigger if we have that sense that we're serving an audience and we speak to an audience instead of let's educate them to be more sophisticated. Because, you know, I always say educational system hasn't always been so successful, so let's get them excited first instead of to educate them to be excited about things that are not very exciting. So one of the things that I do try to do is actually to get them excited. And audiences are thrilled when they see, for example, people jumping. And so in certain kind of dance, when there's no jumping, where there's too much groveling on the floor, it actually does not win an audience. And I think that that's actually not a good thing, because we're producing so many dancers and so many more capable bodies these days, regardless of how artistic or expressive young people can be. But just in terms of ability, you know, it's quite staggering to see what some bodies can do. And dance should have a much bigger audience than we have in the United States. Now, in Manhattan, it's different. There's always ballet going on, and some modern dance. But outside of the major cities, it's still not a consumer product. And I use that term consume advisedly, because we are the consumer culture, you know? Everything is advertised and everybody wants to sell whatever they have produced, reach a bigger audience. And I think that's very good. Clearly, that has succeeded. But wouldn't it be nice if there's a huge appetite for dance, then more dancers would get work?
It's so fascinating to hear you that at our age, so you talk, and I have so many questions for you. Question number one: how old were you when you started to do your first work, and especially on young Mozart?
Okay, that was when I was actually probably in my early to mid 20s.
Quite.
So, you know, as I was saying, you know, at that point, even though in terms of real age, it wasn't that young, but in terms of for dancers, because I think that we remain innocent for a long time, because we have to do whatever people tell us to do, you know. And so, but now that's different these days, because if people go to college and then they start taking dance classes, they already have minds that are formed. But, you know, as teenagers, what do we know? And you probably started even before you were 10, where, you know, people say, turn the feet out, and we just do it, you know? And so I think that that's also a really good thing. And I have to credit, you know, the people who have a say in my career, that they very much try for a very long time to shield me from becoming too grown up, because a certain amount of innocence is good for the work. You know, because if we get too cynical, then I think that the dancers may not evoke that joy. I remember that even when I was not so young, I actually went and made a dance called Kinderspiel, which of course is German for child's play, written by Mendelssohn. And Mendelssohn actually had a very charmed childhood. and of course, Mendelssohn was a genius, but also had a sister, Fanny Mendelssohn, that the music world is now discovering that she was quite a wonderful composer on her own, but as a woman, her work was not as pushed ahead as Mendelssohn's work, and he had a wonderful childhood. The family was well-to-do, and so there was such joy in his music. And then at one point he wrote these 6 sections for his children, and it's absolutely charming and bubbling with life. And I thought, it was good that I can still get into making dances like that. I remember the New York Times called another Mendelssohn work that I had made, the octet, that it had brimming exuberance, which is certainly of the music, but the critic did say that the dancing also had that. So I was happy about that. And I think that's a really important thing. Music is really the closest other art form to choreography, or rather, I usually talk about making dances instead of choreographing, which until recently the general public actually didn't really know that there is such a thing. A lot of the wider audience out there think that the dancers just make it up.
So that comes to 2 questions very important to me personally. I discovered much later in my life that Clara Schumann, wife of Robert Schumann, was fantastic composer, and I loved her pieces, and of course Robert Schumann, and so she served her husband, but in reality, like, woman's role was like secondary.
I know, isn't that, you see, but you probably, but of course, luckily, in ballet, the ballerina is the prima.
It's in here.
Yeah.
Let's make it clear.
Yeah.
And the second thing is that it kind of relates me to what you're saying, because I guess since my Bolshoi school days, I hear music through dance, or the other way around. I only hear music like in a certain way. It's like almost visualizing anything you take, besides the classics, which I grew up. Even say like Led Zeppelin, I hear and I see dance. So my next question to you, I would like to have. So how do you start? Does music inspire you, or the movement inspires you, or actually concept?
Any one of those, and sometimes a combination. There's another. I have made several ballets that have a story. I start off wanting to tell a story, then I found the music, and the first time it was interesting in terms of movement, and as the Christian Science Monitor said, different angles and all good things, but the audience didn't quite get the story. So I saw it as not so successful, but of course I also didn't. The title was a little bit too indirect. And then the second time I made it, it was closer. And then the third time, and it was an accident, I had heard, I will go into detail a little bit because it's really quite interesting, that I have been asked by the director of a company to tell him why a particular work didn't succeed with the audience. And just to make it short, we talked about what that company was really about, and it was about spoofing, dance, ballet. So I said, well, first of all, if you want to spoof something, you have to know that something really well. And then the second thing is that you have to do it really well. Otherwise, people don't get it. And then the form that they were spoofing was flamenco. And I thought, I thought about it, and I said, well, first of all, I said, and there'll be no names, but the choreography was very simplistic. And also they used this thing of a tall woman and a short man, and I said, that gag lasts only for 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. You can't build a dance of 25 minutes on that. So it just, after the audience laughed the first time, it comes back again, it's no longer funny. Mm-hmm. It's not something you can really, because you're making fun of something that the people can't do, the short man, the tall woman. Well, we've seen it before. So I said, and then I also said, I'm not sure that you can spoof the flamenco form, because it's more than just an art form that's full of itself, but it's the gypsies' catharsis. Mm-hmm. They're almost a religion, and I don't think you can make fun of something that's so important to one major group of people in the world. And then I said to him, well, if you want to, I understand that you want to have something that's south of the border, but the word diverse hadn't come in yet at that point. And I said, I'll tell you what form you can spoof. It's the tango form. And then shortly after that, I went to the record store. It was still vinyl record at that point. And I was looking around. Actually, I needed to get a clean copy of Puccini's Mass, and so I got that. And then I saw there was a record sitting there. Somebody had left it there after taking it out, and it's got a guy, nice, very kind-looking guy, playing something that's turned out to be a bandoneon. Mm-hmm. The Argentinian form of a
almost like accordion.
Yes, accordion. And so I look, and it says Piazzolla. And by then, I had already heard of his name. People use his tangos. Hans van Manen used him. Peter Martins used him. And I always liked flamenco and tango. So I bought the record. I thought I'd listen to his tangos, and one side was the three tangos, and then they were lovely, but I didn't have an inspiration from that. And then I turned the record over, and it said Concierto de Bandoneon, concerto for the bandoneon. Classical form, concerto. So I listened to it. It was in 3 movements. And I thought, oh, maybe I could choreograph that for this company that had actually come to me hoping that I would say, okay, I can fix your flamenco piece. But I basically told them that it's not fixable. So if I gone back to him and said, here's one that I can make a spoof. And then the more I listened to it, the more I said to myself, you know what? It's not going to be a spoof. It's going to be a real piece. It's going to be a serious piece. Because toward the end, when I heard the ending on the last note, a rifle was going to be fired. But before the person who commits the murder, that person would kneel down and cross herself. It was right in the music. Well, I heard it in the music. but I swear when you must know this, when you hear something, that you're convinced that must be it. He wrote it for that. So then it ended with a dance that was done many times and can be restaged, called Murder in Buenos Aires.
How long is the piece?
It's about 23 minutes. And what I think was quite wonderful is that it has its own kind of controversy, because when we toured all over Mexico, they just loved it. They totally understood why when there's a triangle that ends up with a murder, it's a crime de passion, and then but in Norway, one review said it's a very wonderful treatment of the tango form, but one does wonder how a human being would kill another human being just for the man, and so it's like such different temperament, because I'm sure that when there's a triangle, the other one probably would say, well, invite her to dinner and we'll all speak about it.
It's a different culture.
That's right.
People react. It's so fascinating what you're saying. When you were talking about Piazzolla and tango and flamenco, in my previous, so to speak, lifetime, I met Antonio Gades.
Yes.
Yes. In
Wow.
Spain.
Wonderful. Yes.
And I was young. I guess I was maybe 17 or so. I was still going to school, and so he was performing, and also his company was performing somewhere up in the mountains in Spain, and for myself being that young and not experiencing yet the passion, the whatever, whatsoever, I was fascinated because he's short and he doesn't.
Yes.
I was fascinated his almost like magnetism of an animal.
Yes.
And
Yes.
passionate.
Yeah.
And
ready to pounce.
It's unbelievable. And that at that time I thought, Spain, Spanish language, Spanish people, this is for me, because I like this. But in some way that I see in artists, if you have this inner passion, it expresses even classicism and the lyrical stuff. You can see you feel.
Yes, I think that from your country of birth, that there is also that enormous passion in old Russia. I think I mean, look at Onegin. Look at Tatiana in Onegin. I mean,
take Dostoevsky. Oh my God, Crime and Punishment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we there was a time where now it seems such a long time ago. I would say to people, well, in high school we used to read Dostoevsky and Tolstoy, but never mind that these days. That's why early on I said that our educational system hasn't been so successful that we need to educate our audience. We need to get them excited, and I really so believe in that.
In passion.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
and emotions and passion.
Absolutely.
So can I ask you a question? Because I always, we're attracted to so many composers, and we see things through music, right?
Yes.
A lot. When also I was at school, very young, Bolshoi school, I was
Right.
Leonid Lavrovsky, the one who created Romeo and Juliet. So he created Ravel Bolero. Right. And it starts very slow in the darkness, and you just see like little hands, and then it builds up, and it's all character in flamenco dresses. And so as music builds up, being young, you're sitting in the audience, you sort of build up, and you realize that brings a simplicity of following the music. You don't have to do so many steps to convince somebody. Simplicity is the key.
Yes.
Michael, do you ever use, I do in my dancing, like silence, like
Oh,
there's
yes.
no movement. So
Yes.
how would you, I know what my view on that, but how would you describe silence, no movement at all in dance?
It's we call it the moment of suspension. Now, when I want to, the moment of suspension right before, sometimes in continuous movement, teachers tell us about transition, but it's that moment when you're absolutely at the height of that movement. The movement goes in over curves or under curves, but usually it's on the over curve when you go into another movement. When you take the next breath, one breath is out and you take the next breath. That's the moment where I think that, and if you can prolong that moment, that is really what makes the audience go like that. And you know, like huge Russian jumps, Chatskis in the air, it's that moment, and you feel like they're staying in the air. But now I actually teach dancers. I said there's a specific way that, but it takes me working with that dancer for quite a while. Well, of course, you know, lots of people are able to get dancers to do that, but to create that movement regularly, that moment in the air, and I think that yes, and recently I put a girl on point in parallel at the bar and just guide her with my hands. And of course she wants to be in control. I said, lose control. and I said, see, it's like being dead.
Yeah.
That you know, and that is
the spirit
that is,
takes
yes.
The spirit takes
Yes. I mean, you of course you know that whose work was it? Lila Garden, Tudor, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where I remember somebody or reading somebody saying that at the moment when the woman who's about to be married, is it Carolyn? I think Carolyn, that rises on point. And I remember, but although I can't find it anywhere, I don't know, maybe I made it up, but I thought I had read somebody saying that it was like she had ascended to heaven. So at that point work is not just a technical thing, but it is literally used as a physical metaphor for flying. Such a delight to speak with you.
Thank you so much.
And to see you.